welcome to the pruning video series. The pruning is now done on the farm and the blossoms are out, but we still need to talk about one more important topic that can make or break your pruning experience next time, and that is what tools to use and how to keep them running at their best. Before we move on, I need to get one thing straight. There are two main ways that pruners work. The most common type of pruners that are used in commercial farms are the bypass loppers. As you can see, they are called bypass pruners or bypass loppers because they do just that. They pass by each other when cutting through the branch and then lop or cut off the branch. The other main type of pruners are the anvil type. As you can see, these pruners are like a knife on a cutting board. The blade is sharp on both sides of the cutting edge, and it cuts straight down through the branch until it hits the backstop or backer plate. There are certainly pros and cons to both cutting styles, but the bypass loppers are almost always preferred in most commercial settings. Without getting into too much detail, the anvil pruners can cause unwanted damage due to the pressure that is being caused on the back side of the cut. Although due to the blade design, it is sometimes easier to cut larger branches. The bypass pruners only put pressure on the back side of the branch that is being cut off. I usually find that it is easier to make precision cuts with the bypass pruners. And for this video, I will be talking about bypass pruners, as that is the type of pruners most professional growers prefer. Let's start by talking about one of the most basic pruning tools, which is the hand bypass pruner or secateurs. These pruners are lightweight, work well on small detailed cuts, and are not too overly expensive for a quality pair. The downside to these little pruners sometimes can be that they are not always large enough for bigger cuts, and your hands can get quite tired if you're using them all day. So, if you're cutting some bigger branches on your trees, or finding that your hands are getting worn out, it may be time to get an upgrade. There are many options that we have, so let's take a look at some of the possibilities. The larger bypass loppers are probably one of the most common tools used on many farms. A good set of these pruners are usually not too expensive and give you the leverage needed to increase your cutting power. Now I find that one of the other advantages of these types of pruners is the added length. Since the handles are much longer, your reach is also increased, thereby reducing the amount of ladder work that may be needed. The only downside with these pruners is that sometimes it can be more difficult to make detailed, precise cuts. If you want to be able to cut larger branches, still have added reach, and reduce fatigue on your body, you still have a couple more options, but they are usually more expensive. Now there are three main types of pruners that provide mechanical assistance. They are air, electric, and hydraulic. For this video, I will only be talking about electric and air pruners, as those are the two types that are most commonly used in this industry today. Air pruners work by, well, you guessed it, air. A compressor is needed to supply the air to a holding tank. From the tank, the air is then pumped through the hose into the cylinder of the pruner, which has a piston inside. When you pull the trigger, the air pushes on the piston, causing the metal arm to force the cutting head on the pruners to close. On top of reducing the strain to the operator, one of the main advantages of pruning with air is that it is quite fast, and you can have different lengths of extension poles to minimize the use on a ladder. The downside of having to run a compressor all day is the maintenance of the engine, noise of the engine, cost of fuel, and the long air hose that sometimes gets tangled. The other main option is electric. This technology has come a long way in the last while. The electric pruners are getting lighter, quicker, and more powerful. A few advantages of electric pruners are that they are quiet, and you don't have to be attached to a long cord. Some models may be slightly slower and heavier than air pruners, but they are pretty comparable these days. The bypass pruners are the most commonly used tool on the orchard, but we can't forget some other tools that can really come in handy as well. The foldable pruning saw is a great, lightweight addition to any serious pruning arsenal. This little tool is handy when you're not making too many large cuts, but still need to make them once in a while. If you have many large cuts that are too big for your bypass pruners, a small regular chainsaw or pole chainsaw is probably the answer. Now these tools can really save time and wear and tear on your body. Here is something to think about. If you are second guessing making larger cuts with your bypass pruners or foldable handsaw because it will take too much work, it's time to invest in some new tools like the chainsaw so you can make proper cuts every time. Big branches only get bigger in the next year. If in doubt, it's probably almost prudent to take it out. Having the right tool for the job is essential. Also, keeping the tool working at its best is important so you can focus on the proper cuts. There is nothing worse than a cutting edge that is dull. Dull blades can actually cause damage to the trees by ripping the bark instead of actually making a clean cut. Now, clean cuts heal faster with sharp blades and are less work for the operator as well. A common question I get in regards to pruning blades is, how often should I sharpen them? Well, this depends on the type of cuts you're doing, the hardness of the steel, and how many cuts per hour you're making. But generally, it doesn't hurt to touch up your blade at least a few times a day. Now, the best answer is, as soon as you notice that a blade doesn't cut as well as it did when it was razor sharp, it's time to sharpen it again. There are a few different tools that you can use to sharpen your blade. If your blade is very dull, I usually start out with a powered Dremel stone bit, then usually move to a high carbide edge, then sometimes finish off with a diamond stone or fine stone. To get an extremely sharp edge for jobs like grafting, some growers will even use a leather strap to finish off the edge. But I've found that just using the carbide edge and a diamond file is often the quickest way and gets good results. Now, be sure to only sharpen the angled cutting edge. If you also sharpen the back side of a cutting edge on an angle, you will end up making a wedge that will force the pruners apart when you try to cut a branch. Now, the back side of the pruners must stay flat. The supporting arm of the cutting edge that passes by should also not be sharpened on an angle. You can give it a quick touch up with a filing stone that is laid flat to get any extra residue or a burr off, but that's it. This is not the cutting edge. Sharpening this edge will cause the pruner blades to move apart when you're cutting, which is not what you want. Keeping your cutting tools clean and lubricated is also very important. If you suspect that you may have some trees with disease, it's probably a good idea to make up a bleach solution in a spray bottle and clean the pruners often so that you're not spreading the disease. Now, make sure you rinse the pruners with water after you use the bleach and dry them out thoroughly. Then lubricate all the metal parts, paying special attention to the moving areas of the blade. And also, make sure that you keep the blade bolt tight, but not too tight. Like most tools, you get what you pay for. It's usually a good idea to pay a little more up front and get a quality tool rather than try to save a few dollars and go with a cheaper product. There are several high-quality pruner manufacturers that have been around for a long time. If you choose one of those brands, you will most likely have many years of quality cuts ahead. When you're pruning, it's almost always an advantage to be close to the tree. Since many of the trees are tall, you will need something to get you higher. Now, ladders work well, of course, but elevated platforms are often even more effective if they are available. Now, pruning is probably one of the most important tasks that can set your trees up for success year after year. It can also be a very rewarding job as you get to shape the trees so that they can be optimized for quality production. Hopefully these videos will help make you a better apple pruner. Be sure to check out our other videos on apple thinning and apple picking under the names Apple Thinning Like a Pro and Apple Picking Like a Pro. Thanks for watching.